Boomer, you're stuck in the past. Your ways don't work anymore. Yeah, I know. And I'm happy there. The past, if you're a mechanic, the past was an awesome place. Now you have to understand something. I spent a lot of time living in the present, like way into the 21st century. And then I'll tell you what happened. One day I was struggling through the typical thing that a modern mechanic struggles through. And I remembered an episode of a TV show that was on like sometime in the 1970s. And it was a thing called That's Incredible, right? And it was like an hour-long show, and they'd go and they'd show all these different things around the world, you know, like people setting records and doing all kinds of crazy stuff. So they had the guy that had the recognized highest IQ, like, in the universe, right? And they went and they did a feature on him. And as it turns out, this guy, this brilliant, like super genius guy, lived in a trailer, and he didn't own a car. He had a motorcycle, because that was the simplest form of transportation that he could, you know, deal with. And his trailer that he lived in was the simplest trailer that he could deal with. And he did these things because he was devoting all of his attention to writing a mathematical equation to prove or disprove the existence of God. This is a smart guy, right? I go shut the compressor. So being a mechanic in the 21st century, my tool collection assortment had grown to like this ridiculous thing. And test equipment, always upgrading test equipment, always buying the next thing, always, like every year there was a new thing. And training courses, which I didn't bother taking. I probably should have, but I didn't. I was stubborn and I'd figure it out how to do it on my own. And I usually did. And the internet had just become a thing then, so it was fairly easy to research and diagnose. But still, it was a complication. You know, instead of getting that immediate mechanical gratification of, oh, I found the problem, I fixed the problem, boom, let's go for a ride, right? You didn't really have that. Now you had to drive the car for 100 miles to put it through its cycles, and please, it was a nightmare. And I says, you know, I don't want to live here anymore. I don't want to live in the 21st century. This sucks. There's no happy here. And that's when I started driving 1960s, 1970s cars exclusively. I was like, I'm going to rid my world of anything modern. All of my metric tools, I threw them away. All my test equipment, I threw it away. I didn't even try to sell it. I was just so fed up, so disgusted. Everything went in, you know, in the trash. Never looked back. Best decision I've ever made in my life, because it's been happy ever since. This is for you younger guys, because like you hear stories about the old days, but they're kind of abstract, right? I'm going to show you. I'm going to tangibly show you what the old days were like and why I insist on staying here. This is the 1967 Plymouth manual, service manual. This is the factory service manual. That's it. Okay, this is the sum total of it. This isn't the Plymouth Valiant service manual. This isn't the Plymouth Belvedere satellite service manual. This isn't the Plymouth Fury service manual. No. This is the entire Plymouth line. Every part, every component, every test procedure, every repair procedure, everything. The universe of what you need to know about all 1967 Plymouths is right here. The Dodge version, I mean, the Dodge version is 99% identical, but there are differences in how marker lights are held on or grills are held on or whatever. But mechanically, it was the same. And then the Chrysler book was even smaller than this because they had fewer models to cover. I know, you can find stuff on the internet, but the days when you didn't have to go find stuff on the internet, it was right here. Chevy books were about the same. Ford books were always a little thicker because Ford had too many engineers and always had to throw something else into the mix. Test equipment. It's 1980, okay? And you are a full-time mechanic. You need to have everything on hand to service anything that comes through the door. So you need your test equipment, right? I say 1980 because that's about the year where things really started to change. There were some oddball things here and there, the Chrysler lean burn, and there was some digital fuel injection systems here and there, but they weren't the norm. You weren't going to run into them as a regular mechanic. 1981, General Motors with the CCC really changed things. Well, let's call it 1980. So it's 1980, and you're a mechanic, and you want to have all the best stuff. Now, keep in mind, 1980, and even before that, you had these giant Sun engine analyzers with scopes and oscilloscope and just crazy stuff, right? They were useless. It took more time to hook those things up than it took a sharp mechanic to use the basic tools to troubleshoot. Those things were put into bigger shops to put on a show for customers and explain, here, this is why you need to come here with all of this crazy stuff and we can buy. No, you didn't need any of that. This is what you needed, okay? If you were a top-of-the-line mechanic in the day, this is the tool, this is basically your diagnostic set. Look at this cool old school compression gauge. I found that in the States still. I paid like $2 for it, right? An old school compression gauge like this. A vacuum gauge like this. And we did a video on how to use a vacuum gauge to tune. Uncle Kathy, Ultra Kathy. We'll put a link to that video. Of course, you need a test light, right? And a timing light. And then this gizmo right here. So this is cool. My buddy Josh gave me this, I don't know, a couple of months ago. Josh is the guy with that green 440 Charger, which we'll be getting back to soon. So this right here is a full range electronic test deal. Now with this, you could test all of the typical stuff, you know, ignition dwell and RPM, but also you could do your alternator voltage tests, you could do ohm tests, you could, like, you name it. And if it was electronic and it was found in a car of that era, well, this is what you needed. It came with, and by the way, I've tested this thing and it works. It came with all of these different attachments so that you could perform different tests. Here's all of the information. Here's everything you need to run this device right here, okay? And literally test every component on every car that's in common use in 1980. And I believe that's actually the year that this is from, 1980. And to start or draw and all sorts of other things. And in the future, we'll use this for different things, and I'll show you specifically how it works. But I just wanted to show you, like I said, younger guys are like, they can't really wrap their head around just how easy things, how good we had it back then. You know, we didn't know we had it good. The 70s were a weird time. If you were living in the 70s, it was like, this sucks, because compared to the 60s, the 60s were a pretty crazy time. But compared to the 60s, we felt like we were like in sloppy seconds, you know, on a decade. But that's not the case. The 70s actually were a really good time looking back at it. And you know, the proof of that is go into any supermarket, go into any department store. What's playing on the sound system? You know, the Muzak system, right? It's the Ramones. We didn't realize how good we had it. So that's what your highfalutin, top-of-the-line mechanic was going to have in 1980. The hobbyist, the guy like you or I, you know, just messing around with our hot rods or our cars or whatever, we would have a test light. We'd have a timing light, we'd have a vacuum gauge and a compression gauge, and then we would have one of these. This is just a basic Tack dwell meter. And you can still find these, they're out there. This is a very simple 2-wire setup, okay? The green goes to the negative on the coil, the black goes to a ground. That's it, that's all your setup. And then on here, you can read engine RPM, dwell, and the voltage going to the coil. Which really, from a tune-up perspective, this is all you really needed. And tomorrow's video, I'm going to show you guys how to set. All right, so GM, beginning in 1960, 61, I don't even remember the year, but GM went to a thing called Uniset, right, where the points couldn't be set with a feeler gauge. You had to use a dwell meter. Use an Allen key and a dwell meter and open and close the points until you found the right dwell. Well, I'm going to show you guys how to use a dwell meter to set the points on a Chrysler, a Ford, or an AMC, or anything else really that has points that you would normally use a feeler gauge. We'll do that tomorrow. But I wanted to just show you guys, give you an idea, like, you know, why I'm so stuck in the past, why I cling to my old school ways. You know, because they're simple and they're effective and they're fun and they offer immediate gratification. And those are all of the things that I want out of my cars. Did you get something out of that? I hope so. I'll see you tomorrow.